People in this country want a living wage. What do they get? 1 out of every 3 full-time workers in this country makes Walmart wages. $6.50, $7, $8, $9, $10 an hour before deductions. That's 1 out of 3. If the minimum wage was adjusted for inflation from 1968 to today, there'd be a $10 minimum wage. The economy has doubled in productivity per worker since 1968, and the workers are way behind the 1968 minimum wage purchasing power. What does that do to your level of public indignation? It isn't enough that we know these things. We have to have fire in our belly. We have to have what psychologists call emotional intelligence. Who says no on the living wage? Walmart, Burger King, McDonald's, Kmart. And they make it stick, even though the vast majority of the American people thinks that the idea that you work a full week and you can't support a family with the barest necessities of life, and you have a few of these corporations picking up Congress by the neck, and we sit around watching American Idol. Before you get tough with corporations, you got to get tough with ourselves. It's only ourselves that are going to change this situation. People want the taxpayer dollar to be used properly and efficiently, not corruptly, not funneled to corporate subsidies, handouts, giveaways. We call the corporate state. Right now, the only real capitalism is small business. They're the only ones that are free to go bankrupt. The big corporations go to Washington for bailouts, handouts, giveaways, you name it. That's you. You're the ones who are bailing out these corporate crooks. Aren't you entitled to resent that? Huh? Okay, doesn't that get a little fire in the belly? Huh? Imagine you go to work every day and you send a slice of your paycheck to Washington, D.C., and they turn around and bail out corporate crooks who are running their companies into the ground, destroying their own workers' prospects, and taking off with $50 million corporate parachutes? Who says no to the taxpayer dollar being used for taxpayer interests, small taxpayer interests back home to repair the schools, the clinics, the public transit, the sewage treatment systems, the drinking water systems? The public works are falling apart in this country because our tax dollars are going to destroy Iraq's public works. They're going to destroy Afghanistan's public works and people, because they're going to weapon systems that were originally designed for the Soviet Union era of hostilities and have no shred of any strategic or tactical purpose apart from not pushing for global arms control and the end of nuclear weapons. Just look at it conventionally. Why are we funding Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Boeing, Grumman for all these death-dealing weapons of mass destruction? When there's no more Soviet Union, what are we afraid of? Moldova? Communist China is going to send missiles here? Why should they? They're getting all our industry and jobs without doing anything except repressing their workers at 45 cents an hour and letting the companies contaminate the environment over there, which comes back into this country with contaminated seafood grown in aqua farms that are horribly polluted, comes back in defective tires, comes back in lead-based paint on toys, comes back with ingredients we don't know about in our own pharmaceuticals. Heparin was just sent over here by some Chinese factory that the Food and Drug Administration didn't inspect, and 100 Americans have already died from just that. Blood thinner was contaminated. At what point do we say to ourselves, this is the breaking point? We're not going to take this anymore. These two parties are nothing more than agents of giant corporations who were born in the USA, became profitable on the backs of American workers. When they got in trouble, they went to Washington for a taxpayer bailout. When they got in trouble overseas, they called on the U.S. Marines. These giant corporations have no more allegiance to our country other than to control our country and our communities or abandon them to communist dictatorships or other oligarchies in the third world. where they can repress their workers and make a mess out of the economy so that there can be some billionaires over there regaling themselves. Who says no to opening up the presidential debates? It's not just the two parties who control this little corporation called Commission on Presidential Debates. It's not just the two parties. It's Anheuser-Busch. It's Ford Motor Company. It's AT&T. All the corporations that fund the presidential debate. You think they want me on those presidential debates? Huh? This is the combination of politically corrupt parties with corporate check writers. And the only way you reach tens of millions of people, unless you're a multi-billionaire candidate like Perot, and only he couldn't even reach as many people, is to get on those debates. You see how they lock up the system? They get the networks, the television networks, to be the conveyor, and they choose who gets on and who doesn't. And ever since they let Perot on in 1992, which launched him to 19 million votes, they haven't let anyone else on. And there we are. You know, we just sit around, you know, oh me, oh my. Country's going to hell here, and wonder why they're so bitter in small towns in Pennsylvania. Yeah, Hillary Clinton says she wants to bond with the working folks in Pennsylvania, so she takes a shot in the beer and the bar. You know. She hasn't done much of that, given the way she sipped it, I'll tell you. And Barack Obama, he's for change. You know that. He's all for change. And remember, we're one nation, and we're one people, and we have to unify. Unify against what? We have to unify to topple the power of giant corporations that have subordinated the sovereignty of the people, which we have enshrined in our Constitution. That's what we should unify against. You know, when you hear the HMOs and the hospital chains, the drug companies saying no to full Medicare for all, just think of this. This is the only Western country where people die because they can't afford health care, where people get sick before they can afford health care. Can you imagine anybody running for president of the United States on the Democratic and Republican ticket and never once mentioning 300,000 Americans who lose their lives every year in preventable situations? They don't talk about 65,000 people who die from air pollution every year, EPA figures. They don't talk about 58,000 workers who die from workplace-related diseases and trauma, OSHA figures. They don't talk about over 80,000 people who die from medical negligence in hospitals, excluding emergency rooms, according to the physicians of the School of Public Health at Harvard University. They don't even mention that 18,000 people, equivalent of 6 9/11s, die in this country because they can't afford health care in the land of the free, home of the brave. Update your profile on Facebook some more before we wake up and take back our country, our future. These corporations are eroding our society. They don't have a broad grasp of human values. That's not their job. Their job is just to make more money. And we cannot allow institutions whose only job is to make more money, often selling us junk products and unsafe products and contaminating products, to have any power in our political and electoral system. That means that the corporate entity has to be subordinated constitutionally, statutorily. It is not a human being. It doesn't vote, doesn't have children, doesn't die in Iraq. The giant corporation must be prohibited from participating in politics, prohibited from lobbying, prohibited from engaging in any political activity whatsoever.